Remember the Steam Machine? Maybe not, because nobody bought it. But Valve is back with a brand new home console, a new controller, and a new standalone VR headset. We'll dig into all of it on Next Gen Console Watch right after these messages. Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show discussing the latest gaming hardware, and we have brand new hardware to discuss this week. I'm Damon Hatfield, and this week I'm joined by IGN Tech Reviews editor Michael Higham and hardware editor Jackie Thomas. And Valve has announced a new Steam machine. They want to get back into your living room and have you playing your Steam library on your TV, but that's not all. There's also a new Steam controller that has the same buttons and pads as the Steam Deck, and finally there's the Steam Frame, a new standalone VR headset that will play VR games in any game in your Steam library in a virtual display similar to the Apple Vision Pro. It's a PC you wear on your face. So there's a lot. Valve has been very busy. Michael, let's start with you. You got to go to Valve recently, check all this out. What are your impressions of this brand new hardware push coming from Valve?
Yeah, both Jackie and I went to Bellevue to visit the Valve studio out there in the greater Seattle area. And overall, I'm impressed with each piece of hardware because this is an example of how Steam or how Valve thinks of their hardware. They don't put out a lot of stuff, but when they do, they make sure that they are iterating in a way that is pushing something new, or they're doing it better than anyone else. And so all three of these things are examples of their growth as a company and what they're putting out. And is also speaking to how robust the Steam ecosystem has become through SteamOS and the sort of ground that they've gained on PC as a platform. I mean, Steam has been omnipresent in PC gaming, right? But they've had a foothold that has only gotten bigger, stronger, more influential. So for them to put out new hardware alongside all of that really makes sense for where all that technology is now. I think when you look at the old Steam controller, when you look at the old Steam machine, it's that, and when you look at the Valve Index, to a certain extent, it feels like that the software wasn't necessarily there. Like the tools to get the most out of these pieces of tech weren't necessarily there. But now they are, and especially as you look at the success of the Steam Deck, not just as a PC handheld gaming device, but all of the innovations they've done software side to make SteamOS feel like a full platform, maybe on the same level as PlayStation or Xbox, some may say. And so when I got hands-on with all of these things, I think my takeaway is that all of these things are seamless to use with SteamOS, and especially with the controller and the Steam machine. It feels like, this makes a lot more sense than it did before, and it works really, really well. I know that both Jackie and I went together, so that's just kind of my impressions, but we kind of do share similar thoughts. But Jackie has also existed in this, been in this space and been really hands-on with a lot of the things that led to this moment.
Jackie, why don't you give us your first impressions?
Yeah, I think it's huge. The reason why the Steam machine failed back in the day was because nothing worked on Linux other than 5 games or something. It was more than that. But what changed was Proton. Valve basically funded this version of Wine that allowed any Windows game to, pretty much any Windows game to run on Linux as if it was native. And that is why the Steam Deck was successful, and they're pushing that even further with the Steam Frame, which doesn't even run on a traditional PC architecture. It runs on a mobile chip, like a phone chip, and they are able to just translate Windows games to that, which is something that both Apple and Microsoft have failed to do, really. And it's huge. This is laying the groundwork for a lot to change in PC gaming.
So the original Steam machine was released 10 years ago this month, in November of 2015. Did the Valve get any indication, why bring it back now? Why is now the time?
I think there's just an appetite for it now. Part of that is, or a big part of that is seen through the Steam Deck. And of course, it being a handheld PC gaming device is a novelty that they kind of wedged themselves into. And obviously, as you've seen with other companies like Lenovo and Asus kind of following suit, they're mad influential, but they're also influential in getting people who aren't traditionally PC gamers. Like Jackie and I grew up kind of in the do-it-yourself PC gaming space where we're building our own systems and benchmarking things and trying to squeeze out performance by overclocking and all these things. But not everyone exists in that space. But yeah, yeah, and then but people know what a Steam Deck is, and they do have these Steam libraries with a bunch of games that they want to play. But you can't ask everyone to invest also in a gaming PC. So the Steam Machine exists for that seamless experience where you don't have to think about much. You could just boot it up as if it was a console, boot straight into SteamOS, and boom, your library games are there. And you have the power. You have enough power to run these games at 4K with some upscaling techniques, of course, and fairly decent settings. I think it's both the time that the software has caught up to the hardware, but I think they're able to build a system, a closed system. This is not going to be an upgradable PC. It's one spec, but it is powerful enough, as Valve claims, to run everything that is currently available on the Steam library. From, like, we were playing Cyberpunk 2077 at fairly decent settings. We were playing Silent Hill F, Metal Gear Solid Delta. Of course, again, this is a console-like experience, but it is still a PC, so you do have to tinker with some settings to get the performance just right. And I think that's a reasonable ask for people who may not be too familiar with this space. But I think that this is the time to bridge the gap, because the appetite's there and the technology is there also. So yeah, and we'll talk about this a little bit more too. Is that as Microsoft tries to encroach more and more onto the PC space, I mean, they have Windows, so of course they're sort of omnipresent in the PC space already. But as they try to align the Xbox brand closer with PC and Windows, they're moving into that space, and I feel like Valve is looking at that like, well, this is our space too, and we're going to be putting out hardware to go along with that. And it's not going to be like a direct confrontation like Xbox and PlayStation, Nintendo over the years, because there has to be some sort of codependence or some kind of synergy between the two. But Valve is really smart with how they put out hardware, and especially with the advancements in SteamOS. So it's like they're in a position to be the ones, if not already, to be the ones to kind of occupy the PC space and really hammer on that.
Well, Jackie, how does the power of this new Steam Machine, how does it compare to the Steam Deck?
So Valve is claiming like a six times performance leap. They shared the specs. It is RDNA 3 GPU with 28 compute units. That is just slightly less powerful than the 7600M, which is a laptop chip, but with a higher power level. So it's not going to be like the most powerful thing. You're not going to be able to max everything out at 4K. You're going to be relying very heavily on upscaling, but it should run everything.
So what's this thing going to cost?
They haven't shared that information yet, but what they did tell us is that it's going to cost equivalent to a gaming PC that's running a 60 class GPU, which is kind of like mid-range budget. My guess is it's probably going to be around $1,000 to $1,200.
Oh wow!
Yeah, this again, like Jackie said, they're not talking about price yet, and they probably just won't know what's going to be feasible for them till they get closer to launch. They're saying early 2026 for this. No definitive release date beyond that fairly wide window. But price is going to be kind of the determining factor. It kind of is for any of these. Any of these things. I know when Nintendo said the Switch 2 is going to be $450, a lot of people were like grumbling about it. And then when the Asus Xbox ROG Ally came out or was announced for price, they're like, yo, $1,000? And it's kind of like, these are expensive pieces of tech. This is state-of-the-art stuff. And then when Jackie and I looked at the internals of the Steam Machine, it's like, this is a very deliberately designed and like high-tech architecture when it comes to how you fit that much power into a cube. If you think about the size of the Steam Machine, it's take an Xbox Series X, cut it in half, and it's kind of the size of GameCube. I think you said that in your written preview, Jackie.
Yeah.
Cool. That's, you think of it as that, and at this time, people will be able to see what it looks like. But to pack that kind of technology into a system like that, it's like that is going to be fairly expensive. But at the same time, it's kind of the same dilemma that the Xbox ROG Ally has, where this is a very high-tech handheld with very powerful hardware, but we're also trying to lure in people who are in the console space, and the expectations when you're in the console space is that things are more affordable. Who's this? I'm not sure how they're going to define affordability once they get to the point of actually putting this thing out, because they're competing for living room space. And so when you look at what a base PS5 costs versus what a Steam machine is going to cost, but also the rising prices of consoles at the same time, it's like all of these things are factoring into a very complicated equation. So I don't know.
I do think that Valve's going to have a little bit more flexibility with the pricing than like Asus was with the Xbox Ally X, because it is a first-party machine, and they can, mitigate some of the costs by just like selling software on Steam.
Yeah.
Because the Steam Deck, if it wasn't, made by Valve, would probably have been a lot more expensive than it was. I mean, but non-Xbox Ally came out and it has essentially the same specs as a Steam Deck, and it costs $600 to start.
Yeah, there are educated guesses you can make, but if you go off of what they asked for with the Steam Deck, it wasn't too out of this world. Like, I looked at them like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, and that was back in 2022, and obviously things have changed. So I mean, I would have my money on maybe like 800 to 900. Again, these are just predictions. I was pretty close when I was talking about the Xbox ROG Ally, but with this one, it's a little bit more nebulous. But that is also going to determine who this is going to be aimed at, and who's going to be able to like put this into their living room. But aside from price, I think this is a smart machine, and yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to like benchmark it more, see how it really performs, especially as like Jackie said, like they're saying this is going to be priced to a similarly spec'd gaming PC, and like how is it going to stack up to that? Is it going to be worth it? Because you are getting a Proton or a Linux-based SteamOS machine, not necessarily like a Windows PC, so it's a little bit different. There isn't as much flexibility on this specific platform, but again, like if you wanted to do that stuff, you could, but it is not intended for that. So, yeah, there's some nuance there.
I like the idea of the Steam machine. I love my Steam Deck. I use it every day. I'm old enough to remember in the 90s and early 2000s there was this Phantom system. It was called the Phantom. Supposedly it was going to be exactly this. It was going to be a box you put on your TV and you put PC discs in it. And just
that
play
was
it as a
Alienware
console.
too, right?
I don't know if it was
I think
Alienware,
it
but
was.
at the time I was like, finally I can play all these PC games, and now almost 30 years later, maybe that's finally going to come true. But talk to me about the Steam Frame.
Oh, yeah.
New VR headset, standalone VR headset. VR has never really caught on the way it was supposed to. It was almost like 10 years ago that like Oculus and everything was coming out, and they're like, this is the new thing. It's remained pretty niche. Why does Valve want to bring out a new standalone headset? Do they give sort of their explanation for that, Jackie?
Yeah, I think they're still really focused on the possibilities of VR, and while it is a standalone device, what's more important is that it connects wirelessly to your computer, and you can play literally any game on it. Has a virtual display where you can like hook it up to a PC that's running like an RTX 5090 and play games on like a huge like 100-inch display in your living room. And then it also, is a VR headset, so you can play your VR games as well. I think the way they described it is like they want you to like put it on as like your primary like way of playing games, and then like if you choose to play a VR game, it's there and you already have it on, so you go with it. But they also just want you to play everything on it. So it's kind of similar to like the Apple Vision Pro in a way, except that it doesn't have that like transparency mode where you can like project your eyes onto the front of it or whatever. Yeah, it's an impressive little thing. I just don't know how many games are actually going to be able to run natively on it, because it is running like the same chip as like a Samsung Galaxy S24. It's going to be a little limited. It's not going to be able to run Cyberpunk or anything. It probably won't even be able to run Half-Life Alyx, but
did you play any games on it? You were able to use it?
I did get to I used it. They demoed it in various capacities, so I got to use the wireless tethering that Jackie had mentioned, and this is kind of this is the key piece of this is the key innovation with the Steam Frame. So it's a 6 gigahertz wireless signal USB from your PC straight to the headset, and it is virtually lag free. So I was playing Half-Life Alyx off of a proper gaming PC, streaming that feed into the headset and playing it without feeling like sick or queasy because there was no noticeable latency to me. And I used to get pretty sick in VR easily after about 30 minutes. I'm like, yo, I need to relax. But again, this is an example of the tech now being there to where like you don't have to strap a wire to your PC to the headset. And you also don't have to use the Lighthouse sensors anymore either, because it has inside-out tracking, which has been in VR for quite a while. I think the Quest 3 is still my favorite VR headset because of how easy it is to use and how good the inside-out tracking is. But now that the Steam Frame has that as well, so you don't have to set anything up in your living room. You don't have to worry about where the wires are going to go connecting to your PC to get the full power of your PC. So the technology is there for that, and that's how they're positioning this to be primarily used as. But also, Jackie did mention the virtual theater experience in SteamOS. I think that's kind of crazy. It looks really good, actually. Nice. Yeah, when I was playing Hades 2 on it, and I was able to like blow it up to the maximum size in the virtual space of SteamOS, and it looked really crisp. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that there was a little bit of stuttering here and there in terms of like getting the video feed of it. So for a fast action game like Hades 2, it was a little bit more noticeable. I'm wondering if that's something that can be hammered out in post or like a firmware update or, whatever the case might be. But it does look really good. It felt like I'm sitting in front of a 100-inch TV without having to put one in my small San Francisco apartment. So that is an interesting use case for it, but also the internals are they're limited. They're fine. I was playing a game called Ghost Town, which is not a robust. It's like a puzzle adventure VR game that isn't graphically demanding, and it ran just fine. But again, like, don't be expecting to play a game like Half-Life Alyx just off of the internal hardware alone. And I think it's just there to at least give you enough power to have these more smaller scale experiences. But really, they want you to use that wireless tethering to a proper PC.
Okay, so I like the idea of a new Steam machine. Like I said, I love my Steam Deck. You both seem very positive on all of this, but you're also, I think, very, the type of people who are very comfortable just building your own PC. So I want to ask both of you, like Jackie, price aside, do you want this new Steam machine? Are you a target demographic for this?
It's complicated. Yeah, I have like multiple PCs in my home that I built myself, so it's not like necessary for me, but I do think it's really cool, and I do just kind of want to play with it. I think this is more for kind of like less of like hardware sickos, because I've been covering PC hardware for a decade. So, but yeah, I think for like people who are like new to PC gaming and just want like a good like foot in the door, it's probably the way to go.
How about you?
I thought about this too. I was asked, we talked about this similarly as well, that I think for me, because I'm so involved in like a proper PC is important for the work that I do. I do like video editing and streaming and all that. So I do need a proper PC, and to have a PC that's powerful enough to do that, it's going to be good enough to run the games that I'm going to play. So I'm not necessarily the target audience for it. But if I wasn't doing that kind of work, I would seriously consider this. Again, we talk about price is very important, but I would seriously consider it, especially if you have invested in a Steam library for how many years at this point. So I think that there's definitely an appeal to it, and using like the Steam controller and just booting it up and then having all that, having access to all that stuff so easily and so quickly, there's an appetite for it. And I think one of the things that they've said is that just their internal data alone on the first-party Steam dock that they sell for Steam Deck users to connect to their TV, I think they said roughly 20% of Steam Deck users use the Steam dock. And so what they're seeing is like, oh, people are wanting to play their Steam games on a TV in a living room space. And I was chilling with my boy over like New Year's Eve last year, and he was playing Metaphor off of a Steam Deck and then connected to TV, and I'm like, man, this doesn't look great. It doesn't run great. But he was like, it's fine. So, and then that's when the moment I thought, hey, maybe like something more powerful. Maybe a Steam Deck 2 would be powerful enough to do something like this. But instead, a Steam machine is filling that gap there, where people do want something to connect to their TV, and having, quote unquote, 6 times more power than a Steam Deck, you're going to be able to run a game like Metaphor at 4K with decent settings and, with a decent frame rate. So it is going to fill that gap that apparently does exist. And for that, I would, if I was in that position, I'm looking at the Steam machine pretty intently, but also I'm someone who subscribes to Xbox Game Pass for now. And then, there are limitations to SteamOS as well, because of like anti-cheat stuff with games like Destiny 2 and Battlefield 6. I know you mentioned this in your preview, Jackie, that because of that, there's still some compatibility issues that need to be worked around or figured out. But I think those are few and far between, those cases there. But because I play so much on Xbox Game Pass, and like if we're talking about quote unquote console wars, like this is kind of where the battleground exists now. It's not Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo. They've all kind of found their own niche, and now PC is kind of the fertile ground in which PlayStation's trying to get in it with their ports.
Yep.
And Xbox is trying to get closer to that and wielding Windows in a smarter way to infuse Xbox onto the platform. And then Steam is out here, and Valve and Steam is like out here kind of already occupying that space. So if I'm playing a lot of Xbox Game Pass stuff on PC, which I am, then I'm kind of like, oh, well, maybe I should just get a proper PC that runs Windows, or even look at the ROG Xbox Ally. These are, nothing is a perfect solution here, but I think everyone has something that is going to appeal to a specific audience.
It's also just cool to have a newish competitor in the living room gaming hardware space, as Xbox continues to de-emphasize the need to own an Xbox, and PlayStation just updated the portal. Now you can stream PlayStation games without even having to have a PS5.
Crazy.
So here comes a new challenger. The Steam machine, the new Steam machine and the Steam Frame are due out early next year, and I, for one, am definitely interested. So listeners, if you're looking for something new to play and you want to give back, head over to Humble and grab 8 amazing games for just $14.99, including Total War, Warhammer 3, Another Crab's Treasure, No More Heroes 3, Etrian Odyssey HD, Pharaoh A New Age, Synergy, Spin Hero, and Paleo Pines. Every purchase supports No Kid Hungry, a nonprofit that provides meals to students in need across the U.S. Build your library, make an impact, and help end childhood hunger. Head on over to humblebundle.com and start playing today. We have a new poll for you to vote on for next week's episode. We want to know which of these Valve announcements are you most interested in, the Steam Machine or the Steam Frame. Make sure to vote on IGN.com the day this episode goes live. We'll share the results with you next week. And that's our show. Thank you to both Jackie and Michael for joining me today. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more on the latest in gaming hardware. We'll see you then.